I learn something new every single day, and that adds to how I lead because I took the time to listen to them, to listen to that person and what they had to say in their perspective. And that's a lot about what this position is, listening and being able to put everything together to make the right decision.
This is the Engaging Leadership Show where we uncover the stories and strategies behind successful educational leadership. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about human-centered leadership. What does it mean? Tactically, what are some of the things that you can do as a leader to be more empathetic, to be a better listener to the people that you're leading and that you serve? We get a middle school principal to share her tactics and techniques to be able to be that human-centered leader for her people. All this and more on the Engaging Leadership Show. Today's guest is an experienced educator and administrator with extensive background in supporting multi-language learners. She served both as a teacher and an administrator in the Santa Clara County office before, and she also holds a master's degree in curriculum and instruction. It's a great privilege for me to welcome into our studios today, Deedy Camanera. She's the principal at Brownell Middle School in Gilroy, California. Deedy, welcome to the show.
And thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege on my end as well.
Deedy, tell us a little bit more about Brownell Middle School and the community that you serve.
Brownell Middle School is in the middle of Gilroy, California. And here we service all members of our community when we're looking at students that are coming from the rural areas or students that are coming from right around our school. The demographic makeup is anywhere between students that come from families that are living in a household and it's multi-generational families that are there, to who you'd like to be with families, and that is made up of friends and loved ones. In addition to, we have foster youth and we have immigrant families that are here. So we have a very diverse population here. Racially speaking, we do have predominantly our Latino families that we have here. We do have some African-American families, some Asian families as well. So we have a little bit of mix of everything regarding our students and the families that surround us here. Our teachers, some are very much veterans here in the community and additionally at the school. And others are just newer teachers that we have here. So we definitely have a mix of the educators on campus that we have here. And when I'm looking at my support staff, we have some that have been in the Gilroy Unified School System a very long time, including our custodian, which has been around upwards of 20 years. Unfortunately, not just with us. However, our office staff, they've been at different sites as well. And we have campus supervisors that help the school to keep running. And we never, ever can forget our paraprofessionals, which are essential in order to make our students feel safe and for them to digest the academics that are upon them.
Wow, it sounds like certainly a very diverse student population and a staff population as well. Just to give the listeners a sense of scale, like what is your approximate student enrollment? How many full-time staff do you have in the school?
So currently we have 31 teachers here on campus, including our support staff. It's upwards of 70 that we have at this time. When we are looking at our students, I believe we're upwards of 670 students at this time. We are definitely not looking at more and more students coming every day. Unfortunately, just due to attrition and due to the decline of the population around our area. Today, we have 673 students here on campus. We also have 3 different programs here on campus. We have one in which we service some therapeutic students. So we have that special population on campus. In addition, we have a special day class of our students also with disabilities. We have a designated English language development class, which actually is a class and not a program that we do have at the other sites as well. I'm very proud of all of those classes / programs that we have here, which adds to the diverse makeup that we have here on campus. And it very much shows you get out of it what you put into it by looking at the teachers we have from those classes and what it takes for those classes to be successful is everyday iterations of what can I do better with that, not only for the teachers, but also myself.
The grass is really greener where you water it sometimes with these things. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that background and wanting to highlight about your own philosophies and your approach to leadership is this whole idea of being very human centered. And then there's a reason why we spoke about the students and the staff and all the people that are around you. You have almost 1,000 people, human beings that you are in close contact with at the school. And if you consider the community, that's even a broader set that you're interacting with on a day-to-day basis as a leader. What does human-centered leadership mean to you in this context?
When I am looking at my staff, students, parents, any human being that's walking into those doors, everyone comes with something. And depending on the day, depends on what they come with. By speaking with the person, knowing that they're bringing something to the table that you may not know about, and treating them in a way that is respectful, that is giving my full ear to them and really listening to them to see what their wants and needs are. To me, that is human centered leadership. That I am not just looking at my English language arts and social studies teacher. I am looking at a teacher that I also know had a family member pass away, that also has a change in classes this year, that also is melding with the new schedule change this year, that also has very challenging kids in their classroom. There is a lot more that comes with just the title of the person that comes through the door. And by recognizing those and understanding those, whatever I do know, and the unknowns, whatever's happening in their life that day that I do not know they're bringing to the table that day, and being understanding in order to meet them where they are at, that is human centered leadership for me.
Wow, that is, on one hand, sounds so simple, but on the other hand, in practice, I can imagine you're holding space for every single individual that you're meeting. How do you do that practically? Because with a 600 to 700 students and almost 100 staff members, that's a lot of people that you have to remember details of, that you have to understand context for. And it's not like you don't have your own work to do. You've got work to do too. And how do you approach being able to deliver on this human-centered leadership in your role?
It is very difficult, quite honestly. For example, this morning I got a text as I'm sitting in my car in the morning, texting with somebody else that is on a conference. And I receive a text from one of my secretaries stating that a teacher is been waiting for me to speak with me. And immediately I think, what happened and that they've been waiting. So I'm like, okay, I need to get in there and figure this out and just put my listening ears on it. And I immediately go to concerns just so I know I could be there. And the teacher was waiting for me to actually give me some of the interesting good news for the morning that came with that. And he said, I don't mean to bombard you in the morning, but blah, 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 blah. And I said, it's so funny. So many people say that to me when they are, quote, bombarding me in the morning. And he said, it's probably because you are a busy lady and they take the time that they can get. And they know that before school can be that time. And that immediately gave me that perspective of them and why it happens so often in the morning. And that grounded me for so many different things in the future. At that moment and in the future, I'm like, he's definitely correct with that. Okay. Most often than not, I walk in and someone's talking to me and my coffee's in my hand, my bag's in my hand, my cell phone's in my hand, my coat's in my hand, and I'm sitting there in the office having a conversation for 15 minutes and I don't get to put my things down. And I'm used to it, although it would be nice to come in and get ready, but now I have a better understanding of that. I'm mentioning that because of just having that perspective of the teacher that's coming in, the staff member that's coming in, and being able to ground myself in that.
I think you gave a little bit of insight into what it means to focus on the human being that you're leading. And I think the related question I have is that this is a difficult thing to do on a day-to-day basis. Each interaction like that, where you're unable to even put your coffee down on the table or take a seat, this takes its toll on you from a mental well-being standpoint, but also just from a mental capacity to be able to contain everything that is being thrown at you. It's almost like drinking from a fire hose. What are some of the things that you do to be able to give yourself that emotional and mental space so that you can give this space to the people around you?
First and foremost, I have to say that most days I'm not very good at that as far as giving me that mental space to do that because I want to ensure that if someone needs to speak with me, if it's at a moment that is not scheduled, but I do have the time, I am going to give them that time unless there is a deadline or something is pressing that I have to absolutely get done. And that is where they get that attention with that. I've always said that I can do paperwork and I can do emails when you all are gone. I don't need you to be here to do those. That has its pros and cons that come with that too. It allows for some very late nights. It allows for me working on weekends, but that's also part of the job. There's some things that you must get done for the school to move forward with that. With that said, I let any staff member, if they're asking to speak with me, I said, if you need that undivided attention, please contact anybody in the office to make an appointment with me. That sounds like I don't have time for them. However, for me, I want to ensure you have 100% of my attention for the half an hour, for the hour, whatever it is that you need, because it will be on my calendar and no one can interrupt us with that. That part, as far as how things can be mentally taxing, it's a matter of creating those systems and protocols for things that are happening around campus. For me, it's a lot of having us work as a team here, which I know sounds very cliche. However, out and about here, it's my office. And I have my office staff that is doing what they need to know. I front loaded them with what's going to be happening the next hour while I'm with you today. My assistant principal, she knows what's going on. My discipline secretary knows what's going on. And they all know what their pieces are. And being able to have the communication with them of what is happening so they know how to support me best, that is essential to happen. That is something that you don't really understand why that is so important until you are in the thick of everything's going on at once. And all of a sudden, people just start doing things because they know what they're supposed to be doing. It's beautiful when that happens. And it's also devastating when it doesn't and something blows up. But you take that as a learning process. And I did not have that system in place. I did not have that protocol in place. Okay, let's step back and look at this in a couple days, debrief, and figure out what we need to do moving forward. Right now, we're smack dab in the middle of that. It is March. It is very much March Madness at any school that you go to at this point. And a lot of things are coming out that are holes that have happened and things that need to start being put into place. Even though it's March, we still can put things into place. And so those things that have popped up, that's what I'm starting to do at this point right now. So those things help make this school function. And as long as I'm open to what are those needs, how can we make them better? And I act on that and put those things in place, then it makes everybody's life easier here at school so that we can do the most important thing, which is keep our students safe and teach them what they need to be taught. That's with that. So it's herding cats sometimes, but everything eventually gets done. I had some great advice for one of my favorite bosses of all time. And at the end of the day, she said, you need to go home and you need to be able to recharge. If nothing is on fire, if no one is hurting and there's not an emergency, it can wait till tomorrow. And that has saved me on so many different days at the end of the day, because that's absolutely right. There may be something I have to get up early for, but I can still be peace of mind. Everyone's safe. I can go home and have that mental break so that I can come back recharged for the next day.
Everything you've described sounds like solid, good leadership. What, in your opinion, makes it human centered? How do you keep that top of mind for yourself as you go day to day? It almost sounds a little bit like servant leadership in a way. Is there a mantra, something that you keep top of mind for yourself as you make all these little interaction decisions about things that are going on, setting protocols in place? Like there are all these things that you're doing that from an untrained eye, it looks like just this is good leadership. How is this uniquely human-centered and uniquely like Deedy's leadership?
I had a teacher the other day. We were on a Zoom call for a meeting we had regarding a student, and many other people were there. And he said, "You have such a big heart. And that is how you look at things. That is how you're servicing this student. That is how you're servicing the situation." And I think I do lead with that part. But with that said, there's always the other side. Although I can lead with that heart, with those persons, the people's needs in mind, and how I can better serve that person as a person. The other part is there's ed code. There is laws that go with our special education team. There are laws that are from our regulations that come from our school district. What is the safety of that? If I send that student to that particular teacher, is that going to work out? Because that teacher is going to be retiring next year. That teacher just came back from a surgery. So there's all these different other things that I must keep in mind in order for me to support that particular person. And that's the part where sometimes what my heart wants to do for that student, knowing the perspective or that person on campus, I can't do that 100% of the time because of these other things that I must also do, because my action on that case may impact other people, other things, or I'm just not allowed to do X due to the laws, due to the plan that student has. Overall, I always remember one of our favorite things that we've spoken of before is you can't make everyone happy. You are not a taco. And that's the hard part of the job as far as I need to make a schedule change. Guess what? This teacher may not be happy with it. However, I can counteract that with they need that support, or let me listen to that teacher once that student is in there to see how's it going? How do you think that we can make this better? Because this is the option right now. It is that delicate balance of leading with the human and their perspective. And these are the other things I must consider with them.
So it sounds very much your starting point is each individual as a human being, their entire context, and you're addressing each person as themselves as an individual. And only then, once you've done that, do you layer in the other regulations, other constraints that you might have that would eventually lead you to a decision. And do you find that it makes a difference to that individual if you approach leadership in this way and you make a decision that goes against what they were hoping for?
When I have conversations with people, especially if it's a change for them, if it is something that I know they may not take too well, I have to validate what they come with. And so that they know I have considered many different factors in this decision. It's not something that I took lightly. And knowing that, it does help. I'm recalling a conversation I had with a teacher the other day, and the teacher was very frustrated. And I don't blame that teacher. Behavior is a challenge right now, and she has some of the toughest students. And so when speaking with her, I need to remember this is a new class for this particular teacher. The challenges that come with some of the students in there are very different. And therefore, I need to be in those shoes. I need to understand that perspective when speaking with that teacher in order to deliver whatever news that may be at that point. So I find it does help just giving the context as to that answer. I'm very big on when I need to understand the why. And I need to remember that when I am delivering a change or news to my staff, I need to front load them with the why. Sometimes things can get busy, and I do. Sometimes I forget with that. And I love it when people on campus remind me of or ask me, well, why did you come to this decision? And it allows me to come back around to that. So I know it helps me as a human being. So I can only imagine how much it can help the others as well.
Do you keep notes of all these things and bits and pieces of context that you have? And being able to store those notes is one thing, and then being able to recall them at the right time is another thing. Do you have a personal system that you use to keep on top of all of this?
I very much rely on my assistant principal. She has an amazing memory. And so when her and I are debriefing, I like to let her know, hey, I've learned this, or this is a situation that happened today. I wanted you aware of it in case I'm not here and she needs to handle it, or whatever it may be, just so that she understands also what we have going on in here on campus and working with that. I also have one of the office staff members. I can ask her something that happened last week on a particular day at a time, and she'll tell me what it is. And it's amazing in that way. I think what also helps me is maintaining contact with that person. For example, I had a teacher that I'm considering another position elsewhere because of X, Y, and Z. And it was for personal reasons. And walking me through what that was allows me to support the person and how they need to be supported for that particular position elsewhere that goes with that. And that's a happy thing, right? Other times I have teachers that I may hear about something from my assistant principal, for example. I know I need to be able to connect with them so that they know, A, I know, and B, give them that opportunity to be able to explain anything they wish to explain. I find by doing that and looping back around with them that I am able to keep it in my mind, if you will, my short-term memory, as far as it's still active, it is not buried somewhere. It's helpful when that happens. And at that point, it could be a challenge at times to get myself out of the office when it's super busy. But I find that by doing that, I am more connected with my staff, my students, the teachers that are out there, because I'm in the trenches and I see what's going on. And they see that I am just not the principal that's sitting in an office. I am out there with the staff and the students, trying to connect with them in that way. So that helps keep those particular things that I've learned about teachers or students, that helps keep it at the forefront of my mind.
That's truly human-centered leadership, because the humans around you are helping you to lead almost in that way. And as you think about the humans around you, do you find that your human-centered leadership style rubs off on them as well? Is that something that you demand of the people around you, that they hold that context of other human beings as they're interacting with them? And how do you help grow leaders in this mold within your team?
So that is the $1,000,000 question. And I state that because when you're out of school and there's so different amount of years that our teachers have here and different places that they're at within their leadership and their teaching journey, that you have some that has found what works for them, but it's not necessarily the path that we're going on with leadership here, because Miss Trams, our AP and I, we are a new team. And therefore, everyone around us is getting to know that as well. When you have your early adopters, as we call them, and they've gotten it and they're having more conversations and they see the direction we're going, they can help with that. But it is a slow process as far as any change that you have. And I say change because it's a change in leadership, it's a change of vision, where our school is going to be leading, where the human center part is leading, that goes with that. And when you look at culture and climate of any school, that goes hand in hand with who your leadership team is and how they are directing that. And by going through this year with my assistant principal, it's allowing us to really hone in on and figure out what is working on that journey, what is not working on that journey, and how can we do things much better next year. And who do we know that's going to be part of that change from the get-go? And who are others that we know that's going to be need more supports that's with that. That's what we do with our students. We give them supports when they need those supports to get them to where they need to go. And that's what we do also when we're looking at our staff and our teachers. Where can we meet them where they're at so that we can help support them in understanding what our journey is and where we're going with that, so that we can change for the better, change to meet the needs, again, ultimately of our students. A book that I am tackling at the moment is The Anxiety Generation. And that book is very enlightening because it's telling us where our students are at. And it's very different than how almost every single person on this campus grew up. And so we need to understand what is needed that's with that. So that amongst other articles that I have read, conversations I had had is helping shape that direction that we're going to have them along the journey of that human-centered approach.
Got it. And another thing that we spoke about earlier was this idea of being very individualized in your leadership as well. And you mentioned this just now, like understanding what each individual on the team brings to the table and using their strengths collectively as a team. How do you embed this philosophy and this idea of individualized contribution within the school? Because if I'm a social studies teacher and was like, all right, I'm good at social studies, I'm good at teaching social studies, that's my thing. Whereas sometimes as a leader, you need to go beyond that and see what are some of the skills that this person brings to the table instead of just pigeonholing them by the subject that they teach.
Exactly. So I'm looking straight in front of me, something we've spoke about, and that is the Clifton Strength Finder. And that is something that was impressed upon me when I worked at the Santa Clara County Office of Education. And every single person that worked for that organization took the Clifton Strength Finder assessment. And what that information that gives us is our top strengths. I believe it's 32 in all. You may correct me considering you've had experience with that as well. But with that said, the top 5 tends to be the ones that you truly lead with. So after I took that assessment and I received back what my top strengths were, it was very eye-opening and at the same time made complete sense. The top 5 strengths that I lead with are number 1, I am a learner, number 2, relator, number 3, includer, number 4, input, and number 5, achiever. Once I read the description of a learner, which is what you think it allowed me to really reflect on why I dive so deep and why I go down rabbit holes. And it made me happy. It gave a name to how I get lost in things at times and how I dive into it and how I can't wait to share that information with others that are there about it because I find it fascinating. Hence the book, The Anxiety Generation, and really understanding where our students are at right now due to the past 10 years. And that helps me focus what I need to provide to students and to teachers alike and anybody else working with our staff that's with that. It helped me understand why I have this human-centered leadership when I have number 2 and 3 are relator and includer. It makes me who I am, and it has everything to do with how I lead. That goes with that. I believed in it so much that in one of my leadership classes I have here and speaking with the teacher of that, I mentioned this to her and she immediately said, A, I want to take that assessment, and B, can we bring it to my students? Today actually is one of their sessions from someone from the County Office of Education, and he's coming and he works with those students to develop these particular strengths that they bring to the table using a junior version of it. And I can't wait to see at the end of this year how the students are perceiving that and what they're going to be taking with them into the rest of their educational career and beyond that go with that. It is something that I'm also considering for next year when we're looking at our leadership team here on campus. How could we work better as a leadership team if we understand these things about each other? It just is eye-opening for the person that takes it to learn about themselves a little bit more, but additionally to do the extra work and learn how to work better with those around you that go with that. Those are ones that I continuously go back to. I have a doorknob to the left of me, and on that is a badge that I use to wear to leadership teams at the County Office of Education. And it lists my top 5 strengths. And I don't know how many times either people ask me about it or I whip it out and says, here it is. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this particular approach.
Oh, that's incredible. And it lends so much self-awareness and self-knowledge to yourself as a leader. But when you give that gift of self-knowledge and self-awareness to people on your team, people that you're leading, it allows them to truly connect themselves with the work that they're doing, exactly as you've described. And that's so powerful to be able to do that. And when you think about the students, because you mentioned that you're now taking this out to the students as well. Like, is this going to be the first time that they're going to be exposed to something like this? When I was in middle school, like, no way was anyone telling me what my strengths were. It must be so transformative for them.
So the teacher, every single year with her classes, she would always have them do their learning modalities. How best do they learn? Are they visual? Are they kinesthetic or auditory? This added another layer to it and different types of skills. It's not necessarily how you learn, it's what you're going to do with that information. What strengths do you have in order to not only lead with, but utilize as well that goes with that? So she's making them have the connection between the two as far as the part that she does with learning styles when the coordinator from the County Office of Education comes. And then they can blend those together. And so they're getting a very unique approach this year with that, as it's the first time we have used Clifton Strengths with students. And actually, this is the first time ever that the County Office of Education has used them with students. So I'm super excited because this is a pilot in some sense, but I'm excited that we are the first to be able to do this. And we're taking that dive to be able to enrich our leadership students and soon to be a leader, enrich our staff and give them insight into who they are as people, because ultimately that's what it is.
And when you reflect on your own journey into leadership, what has been that path? Do you feel like your values have changed as you've grown as a leader, or do you feel like they've always been these strengths-based and human-centered approach to leadership?
Starting out, it was interesting. It was about 15 years ago when I decided I would like to get my administrative credential and go down that path. And I was a very different teacher. I was the teacher that liked to engage my students in a way that wasn't necessarily sitting with a textbook and teaching from it. I figured if I'm bored, I need to do things differently. That's with that. And so if I wanted to make an impact and go down that route in order to impact more people and go into administration, there's a certain path I have to take. At that time, I did go through and started taking the courses, but I got disheartened. And I'm not sure exactly what it was. I just realized after rejection of certain districts I was applying to or positions I was applying to, and it wasn't coming around. And I didn't really have support from anybody. So I just took a backseat to that and realized I think I would like to not teach and do something different in education, of course. And so that's where I found my way back to multilingual learners, in that I was on the journey for the long time. I ended up falling in love with teaching Spanish and did that and realized I need to get back to, I guess, what's more of me? What is my passion? What do I want to do? So I went back and dove into the world again, truly. And it completely changed. There were so many different supports and strategies that were out there that I never knew about because I was out of the game for 8 years. And that just reinvigorated every part of me with that. And I was excited and happy and couldn't wait to go to work again. So that also led me at a point in my life where, okay, if I'm going to do this, I want to go back home. And home was up here in the Bay Area, and it's where I grew up since I was 10. It's where my mom and dad currently live. And coming back up here and diving into a position that was at that time and stated an English learner coach here at the Gilroy Unified School District. And I just hit the ground running and I was happy as a clam. But I also had probably my favorite boss ever. And she 1000% believed in me. And anything that she asked me to do or whatnot was highly supportive, highly suggestive as far as maybe go this route, maybe do that route, and told me the why that was behind it. And that just brought up administration all over again for me as far as I feel confident. I know my stuff. I can do this. And so I did go back and clear my credential and ultimately ended up leaving for a position at the County Office of Education. But fast forward 4 years and I'm back in Gilroy again. So obviously, this place held something in my heart. And I think it is the human part of it because this is where my population is. And what I mean by that is Latino population that is predominant here in Gilroy. It is English language development. It is our multilingual learners that we had here. And I knew they were going to have this here, which is originally why I applied here. And that hasn't gone away. And finding my place here has been instrumental in building who I am today. What I didn't realize until much after I left, probably since I have been back in Gilroy, is I have always been a learner. My top strength that's there. I've always been a relator, but I couldn't identify it. And I didn't even know at that time to explore that piece of it. But it has definitely crept into so many different things that I do and that bigger understanding that I have here.
It sounds very much like your leadership has always been consistent, actually, as you've gone through and evolved. What has changed sounds more like the level of awareness and that ability to name those aspects of you that are presenting themselves in your leadership. Would that be fair to say?
That is fair to say.
That is quite a journey. And it's something that as leaders, we always prize that ability to know thyself. And your journey has definitely led you closer to that point. If you met another educator who was considering taking the next step in her leadership, what is one piece of advice that you would give her, given what you know today?
First and foremost, know thyself. What is your why for moving forward with leadership? What is it that you would like to do? So combine those two things and then top that off with ask a lot of questions. It's definitely going to be something new for you, and you don't know what you don't know. And that is the biggest part about being in a new position, whatever that position is, but especially leadership. It's part of learning on the job. And that's a lot about education, what you end up doing. You always have those people that you can count on around you as far as mentors, for support from the district office, wherever that may be. There's always those people that are around you that are there waiting and ready to support you. However, it is not a typical job where you're going to be shadowing somebody for a while. Someone's going to be holding your hand as you're here with that. No one's going to be right next to you all the time, provided that you have that support network around you and you know who you can go to in order to support you and you can ask questions to. That will make a difference for you. Additionally, in this role as either an assistant principal or principal is knowing my community. Who can I tap on in order to get a pulse on how things are at here? Who's going to be brutally honest with me? Who's going to tell me the bad and the ugly that's happening out there so that I know that, hey, I need to work on that for the staff. I need to work on that for the students, because ultimately, again, it's always about the students that we have here. I think those are the three most impactful things that anyone can do going into leadership is just knowing who you are, what you stand for, how you learn, and don't be afraid to ask those questions. Every single day I say to somebody, this is why I talk to people, because I learn something new every single day. And that adds to how I lead, because I took the time to listen to that person and what they had to say in their perspective. And that's a lot about what this position is, listening and being able to put everything together to make the right decision.
Perfect. To know your why, know yourself, and know your community, and ask lots of questions. That's good advice for anyone, especially people in roles of leadership or aspiring towards leadership roles. So thank you so much for sharing your journey and your own leadership approach so generously, Deedy. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show. For all of you listening, thank you so much for listening and supporting the Engaging Leadership Show. That's all we have for today. This has been your host, CT. Really glad that you're listening in. And that's all for the Engaging Leadership Show today. If these stories resonated with you at all, head over to engagingleadershipshow.com, all one word, where you can subscribe for free to receive more leadership stories and strategies every week. Also, at that link, You can access the archive of all the featured episodes we published in summary form. It's a veritable treasure trove of educational leadership wisdom distilled for your learning pleasure. Once again, the link is engagingleadershipshow.com. Sign up today to receive the next summary this very week. Until next time, keep leading with purpose and passion, and I'll see you in the next episode.